Okay, so the other day, or maybe yesterday, you learned how to factor polynomials in a different form. You learned them when they looked like this. Oops, just kidding. Get my ink, my pen all ready to go. Okay, you learned how to work them when they looked like this. And you guys did a great job. Today, we're going to learn how to factor them when they look like this. And you can see that the only difference between this and this is that there is going to be a coefficient right there in that first term. And these are the steps that you need to use when factoring polynomials that look like this. So I'm going to get the sub or whoever to, if you're watching this in class, to pause this video, and you need to write these steps down. The first step is to find the product of the first and last coefficients. Then you need to find two factors that combine to get you the middle number, which is in the B spot. Then you need to rewrite the polynomial, splitting the term into the two factors. And then lastly, you're going to factor by grouping, and that's that. We had a whole lesson on factor by grouping. So right now we're going to pause. You're going to list these steps, and then I'm going to come back and show you exactly what to do for each one of these steps. So this is a great time to pause the video. Okay, just remember too that when you multiply and you factor polynomials, you can also come back and use the FOIL method to make sure that you've got your answer right. So if we do front and then we do outer, that's 15x plus 4x, which would give you 19x, and then last, 2 times 5 is 10. So we still have the opportunity to check and make sure all of our answers are correct. So let's get into this first example. You've got the steps written down, so we're going to get into this first example. Here we're going to make our little x like we always have. So here it says to find the product of the first and the last coefficient. This is the first one. This is the last one. So 6 times 4 is 24, and you put that right here. Then it says find, and then you put the middle one, this one here, just like you did just like you've done previously. Then it says find two factors that combine to get you the middle number. Okay, so I need two numbers that when I multiply them together, they give me 24, and when I add them together, they give me 11. And after so much practice yesterday, then I know you know that that is 3 and 8. So here, this is where it gets a little different than what we did the other day. We're going to go back to our original polynomial right here. And see this 3? We're going to write it first. We're going to recopy this, 6x squared. Just recopy it. Now we're going to split this term into these numbers right here. So it'll be 6x squared plus 3x. And then the other side is the 8. So it's going to be plus 8x. And then finish it off by bringing that back end down. 6x squared plus 3x plus 8x. That is what we're going to do now. And then our last step is to factor by grouping. So I'm going to group these like I need to so that I can get out the greatest common factor in them. So in this one, I can see my greatest common factor is going to be 3x. So that would be 3x times 2x plus 1. And in this one, my greatest common factor is going to be a 4. So I would do 2x plus 1 here. And now you see that I can go ahead and factor this out to be 3x plus 4 times 2x plus 1. And I'm not going to do it on all of these, but we'll go ahead and do FOIL, and you guys can see that, actually let me write this up and down so it's a little bit better, that we will end up with our original polynomial. 3x times 2x is 6x squared. Then the outer 3x times 1 is 3x. 4 times 2x is 8x. 4 times 1 is 4. We're going to add these two, and we get 6x squared plus 11x plus 4. And you can see that that is exactly what we started with. All right, let's practice again. We're going to factor this one out. It looks exactly like the other one that we just did, except this number, the last coefficient, is 3. So it's not exactly the same polynomial. So we're going to make our x right here, and we're going to take this first step, find the product of the first and the last coefficient. So 6 times 3 is 18, and then this b coefficient goes right here. So now I need two numbers that when you multiply them together, you get 18, and when you add them, you get 11. And you know that that's going to be a 2 and a 9. All right, we're going to rewrite this polynomial. We just did this step and this step. Now we're going to rewrite this polynomial, splitting the term into the two factors. So start with this first one, 6x squared. And I am going to put this number now right here, 2x. And then the other one is 9x. And then this number right here goes right here, plus 3. Okay, now I'm going to rewrite this. Well, actually, I'll just do it right here. There's my grouping. I see that there is going to be a common factor in both of these. So in this one, it's going to be 2x. And that's going to leave me with 3x plus 1. And then on this second one, the greatest common factor is going to be 3. And this will be 3x plus 1. And so our answer is 2x plus 3 times 3x plus 1. Done. All right. Let's try another one. Oh, it looks like this is the same one that we did the first time. So we will just cancel this one and move straight on in to this one right here. All right. So step 1, find the product of your first and last coefficient. So this is going to be 5 times 8 is 40. That goes here. Notice that's a negative, so we put negative 14 here. So I'm looking for two numbers that when I multiply them together, I get positive 40. And when I add them, I get negative 14. And I know you know that's going to be a negative 10 and a negative 4. Done. Okay, so I'm going to make sure when I rewrite this and split it that I make it to where they all have a common factor. So no, I'm not going to put this negative 4 on this side right here because negative 4 and 5 don't have a greatest common factor. But I do know that negative 4 and 8 have a common factor, and 10 and 5 have a common factor. So now I'll rewrite it like that. So I'm going to start with 5x squared. And I know my next number is going to be negative, and I'm going to say negative 10x, not negative 4x. It makes a difference because the greatest common factor between 5 and negative 10 is a 5. So I'll put minus 10x, and then go ahead and put the other one, minus 4x, and then I end with plus 8. Now I'm going to factor by grouping. So I'm going to group, and notice it worked out perfectly. All right, so there we go. The greatest common factor here is going to be 5x, and that'll leave me with x minus 2, and then pull out a negative 4. Okay, so watch very carefully. When I multiply negative 4 by x, I will get negative 4x. What will I need to multiply negative 4 by right here to get a positive 8? That's right, you guessed it. I'll have to multiply it by a negative 2. So that's how I end up with this answer. And then, so last but not least, to finish it off, 5x minus 4 times x minus 2. Okay, let's look at our next one. We'll do this one. Lots of examples. If you want to stop and work this on your own, then we can pause this, and then you can pause it, and then look to see if you've gotten the correct answer. All right, so for this one, we're going to make our x, find the product of your first and last coefficients. Well, 4 times negative 2 is negative 8, and then this 7 goes right here. So I need two numbers that when you multiply them together, you get negative 8. When you add them, you get 7, and that's going to be 8 and negative 1. Okay, so now I'm going to rewrite and find the two factors. That's this step right here. Okay, now I'm going to rewrite them, splitting it into the two terms, and so I will start with what my polynomial starts with, which is 4x squared. I'm going to put the 8x right here. I'm going to put the minus 1x right here, and then finish it off with the last coefficient, so I'm just sticking it in the middle. And then all I have to do is factor by grouping. So I'm going to group this, and then I'm going to group this. Okay, so the greatest common factor here is, I see, going to be 4x, so that's going to be x plus 2. And then I'm going to put a minus sign right here, and I'm going to factor out a negative. So what would I multiply a negative 1? I'll just put a negative 1 by here. What would I multiply a negative 1 by to get an x? And that would just be x. What would I multiply a negative 1 by to get a negative 2? And that would be a positive 2. And so our answer is 4x minus 1 times x plus 2. All right. Next one. And again, if you want to pause and then work this and then check your answer here in a minute, you can do that. But I will keep writing, keep going. On this one, we have 4 times negative 4 is negative 16. And then this negative 15 goes in the center. And the two numbers that when you multiply them together, you get negative 16, and when you add them together, you get negative 15, are negative 16 and 1. So now I'm going to rewrite the polynomial, splitting the middle term into the two factors. And so that's going to leave me with 4x squared. That's what my polynomial starts with. I'm going to put minus 16x. And then I'm going to put a plus x, and then end with the minus 4. This now I will factor by grouping. So I will group this, and that, and that. Okay, that leaves me with, here I'm going to pull out a 4x. So I would multiply that. X minus 4 will give you this. And then, oh, this is x minus 4 already here. I don't have to do anything to that. And so my answer is going to be 4x plus 1 times x minus 4. Check. Good job. Okay, when the leading coefficient is negative, you need to factor out a negative. But we've been doing that, so we'll give an example of this. This leading coefficient is negative. All right, so the first thing we do is just keep starting like we've done. Now watch this. This is a negative 2 times a negative 7. That gives us a positive 14. Okay, and then this negative 15 just goes right here. So the two numbers I'm looking for, negative 14 times negative 1 gives me a positive 15. And when I add those, I get a negative 15. So I'm going to rewrite the polynomial, splitting that middle term into two factors. So that would leave me with negative 2x squared minus 14x plus, I'm going to go ahead and put a 1 here, and then end with minus 7. So all I did was stick in the two middle numbers when I rewrote the polynomial. Now, I'm just going to factor by grouping. So here, this is negative, so I'm going to factor out a negative 2x. Now, what do I need to multiply negative 2x by to get negative 2x squared? And that's just an x squared. And then this would be not x squared, just x. And this would be a positive 7, because negative 2x times positive 7 gives me a negative 14x. And then on this next one, I'm going to factor out a negative 1 out of here. And as I was doing that, I realized that I didn't put my negative sign right there, so thank goodness I caught that. Okay, so this really would be a minus 1 or plus a minus 1. So that leaves me with factoring out a negative 1 like this. That would leave me with x, because negative 1 times x would give me a negative 1x. But over here, this is going to be a positive 7, because negative 1 times a positive 7 will give you that negative 7 right there. And so at the end of the day, what we're left with is negative 2x minus 1, and then x plus 7. So when we have coefficients, the leading coefficient is negative, we have to be super careful about our negative signs when we factor them out. Okay, let's go to the next one. We will do this one. This is going to be same thing. We'll do it. Hopefully, maybe you won't need your steps, but if you do, just keep them open and be looking at them. This is going to be 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. And then this negative 2 goes in the center. So the two numbers I'm looking for are negative 6 and positive 4. So now I'm going to rewrite the polynomial, splitting it into two terms. So that's going to be 3x squared minus 6x plus 4x. And then I bring this negative 8 down right here. And then I will factor by grouping. So the common multiple here is 3x. That would leave me with x minus 2 here. And then the greatest common factor here is 4. And that also leaves me with x minus 2. So 3x plus 4 times x minus 2 is your answer. Oops, oh, and there's all the answers right there. Perfect. Okay. Sometimes you need to factor out a negative 1 when the leading coefficient is negative, and I have an example. We kind of talked about this already. You can write this right here, negative 4x squared plus 8x plus 5. Here are your numbers, negative 20 here. Well, first, factor out a negative 1 right here. When you do that, that changes your original polynomial right here. So notice that negative 1 times negative 4x is 4x squared. So if you take this out and you multiply this, negative 1 times 4x, you'll get that. Negative 1 times negative 8x will give you that. Negative 1 times negative 5 will give you that. And that could make your polynomial easier to factor. So now watch this. Go do your steps. 4x, let me cover this up so it's a little easier to see. Here we go. Whoopsie. Technical difficulties. Totally not happening. Let's try again. And here we go. 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. And then you'll see there's a negative 8 right here. So that numbers we come up with are negative 10 and 2. So then we rewrite our polynomials. And look what I did. I put this 2 here because I knew it would go with this 4. And this 10 here because I knew it would go with the 5. So when I rewrote it, splitting it into 2 terms, I ended up with 4x squared plus 2x minus 10x and minus 5. Sometimes you can switch the order so that you will have a greatest common factor. 2 and 4 obviously have a greatest common factor, and 5 and 10 have a greatest common factor. Okay, so then you factor out 2x here, which leaves you with 2x plus 1 right here, and then you factor out this negative 5. Negative 5 times a positive 2x gives you a negative 10x. Negative 5 times a positive 1 gives you a negative 5. And so your answer then becomes 2x minus 5, which is this, and then 2x plus 1, which is that. Okay? All right, and so that concludes our lesson for this.